Welcome to my What is Going On in the World According to the Torah class. And I'm going to explain some of these things that we're seeing in the world and what it means according to the Torah. How are we going to understand what's happening, and where are we now in relation to our history and what we know from our prophets, that we know that eventually this world is going to end, because we're told that we're taught that there are only 7 millennias, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We know that the 7th millennia is going to be the Messianic era, Messiah, Machiach. Okay, we're promised that Mashiach is going to come, and we know who he is. He's going to be from the lineage of King David. That is the king of Israel, the king of the world, that was promised that the royal scepter will never leave his line. So we're waiting for to reinstate the lineage of the house of the dynasty of King David. And I actually have a nice class. It's part 1, Intro to Judaism, on my YouTube channel, which is From Me to Jew. Check it out. And I explain how the world came to be, and the different nations, and not the world came to be, but the nations, what are the histories of the actual history, not the history that we think happened, but what really happened according to the Torah, because the Torah tells us exactly what happened from Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And then there was Cain and Abel, then there was Seth, then there was Noah, and during Noah's time there was a flood. We know that the world was destroyed a few times. It was destroyed in the age of Enoch, and it was also destroyed again in the flood. And after that, God said he won't destroy the whole world. But we've seen other things since then, like Sodom was destroyed. So, and the Torah tells us basically what's happening. We're supposed to look and understand what happened in the Torah, and then now look into our world, the world that we're told is a world of lies. It's called Olam Deshikra, the Olam HaSheker. And so we know that there's a lie in this world. We know that because of the sin of Adam and Eve, we know that there was a pgam, something happened that lowered. It was a sin, and it lowered the quality of the reality. And we know that this is also explained in my classes on YouTube channel, From Me to Jew. But we know that the Aleph of Or, what their bodies were made out of Or, with Aleph, which means light. And we know that something happened and changed. The Aleph got changed to an Ayin. And Ayin, now that the word became Or, which is skin. And there was a 70 created. Ayin is 70 and Aleph is 1. So from 1, there became, it seems like from a unity, from a 1 became now the dualities, and now other things were created, and that's a 70. And we'll see that that's a 70 nations, for example. And we see on the side of the Holy also the 70 souls that went down to Egypt. And I'm just going to try very quickly, without going into too much of all the backstory of how that happened, but I do in my YouTube channel. So how that happened was what Adam and Eve, and then there was Seth, and there was Noah, and then there was Ham, Yafet, and Shem. After the flood, there was only a few people that survived. Ham, Noah, and Shem were 3 of them. There are also their wives, and I'm not going to go into other things that happened, but pretty much everyone was destroyed. Now, we know that there was a blessing from Adam and Eve, and there was also the knowledge of God, the creator of the universe, who created Adam and Eve, and he had a relationship. They knew God. And then came Seth, that was their son after Cain and Abel situation. And then from Seth came Noah. And this information and this blessing follows this line through Shem. And again, Shem, if you know, anti-Semite, okay? In Hebrew, that's anti-Shemi, Shem. It's these guys, which make up the 70 nations, they're anti-Shem, because Shem got the blessing and the knowledge of God. And they got blessings from Noah. He actually got a curse. His line is Canaan and Cush, among others. I'm not going through all of them. But they got cursed. And when that happened, some of his line, I guess, turned black. That's what happened. It was a curse, and he turned black. And so Cush is African, nation's black. Canaan maybe it was black, I don't know, obviously. But Canaan, they lived in the land of Israel, the land of Israel, and currently the state of Israel, which I'm not even gonna go in. Well, maybe I will. Okay, Zionism. That is Erev Rav. Okay, I'll explain. So what happens, and then Noah has Yefet, his middle son, and he blesses him with the physical things, art, sophistication. And Yefet has Yavan among other sons, and Yavan is Greece. So here you get all your philosophies and your Olympics and stuff like that. That all comes from Iran. Also, Gomer is another son. Gomer, that's Germany. Okay, these belong to the 70 nations. What happened was they didn't get this information from God, or they didn't care. Ham was like the people of the flood. He was wicked, and he has his own philosophy. This is Freemasons. Okay, so Ham, that's the philosophy and the information for the Freemasons. Okay. Canaan also, they were very wicked and evil. Look into the Clinton emails and Podesta emails. They mention a god of Canaan, which is Moloch. Okay, so these people belong, basically, we can see that they're from Ham or whatever. They go after the Ham. The Freemasons, Ham had a philosophy. It was basically like honor amongst thieves, but it's really bad. It's like do everything and like be wicked and whatever, but look out for each other. That is totally Freemasonry. Okay, and they have information, and then the blessing went to Shem. Okay, and again the anti-Shem, because they don't want God in this world, but they did. So God created all of the other energies. God only creates. He doesn't destroy. So God created the angel of death. And basically what happened was these people started worshiping him as an energy and rebelling against God. And eventually, I guess, that energy thought that now it could be God. And so basically there's a tug of war between evil and good, 100% good God. There's a tug of war in the world. Where do we give our energy? Do we serve this side or do we serve God? And so what God did was to counter the 70 nations and the 70 spiritual entities and stuff and everything that was created when the sin occurred and that happened. To counter that, there had Israel. That's the nation of Israel. And what God did was he chose this line and he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to show you this world is mixed with good and evil. It's the tree of good and evil. That's what the tree of good and evil is. But you can choose the Torah. You can choose the truth, the objective truth. Here it is. You have to choose it because the 70 nations are going to control this reality in our world. But if you learn Torah and you separate yourself from them, and you listen to your fathers and you go in their ways, then you'll have the truth. And you'll be able to look at all these signs in the world in whatever generation you are, and you'll know where you are. like in the story of, because God says like what happened, just like it happened in Egypt, it's going to happen again, and I'll send the Messiah, and you'll know he's the Messiah because Eliyahu Hanavi is going to announce it. It can't be anyone else. If Eliyahu hasn't come, there is no Messiah, and he will come, and he will come from the line of David, of King David. And so look into our world and let's see. So just understand then the blessing went from Shem to Abraham, who gave it to Isaac. Abraham also had Ishmael, but he gave it to Isaac, okay? So that's where the truth went, the truth. And then Isaac gave it to Yaakov, but Isaac also had Esav, which is Edom, which is Rome, which is the Vatican. These are who these people are. And Edom, Esav, the son of Isaac, yeah? So he was a trickster. He tricked Isaac. He tried to trick Isaac into making Isaac believe that he believed in God and that he served God. But what Esav did and what Edom does and what Rome does and what the Vatican does is they make it seem, they're tricksters. They make it seem like they're serving God, but they're actually serving the Satan. There's a certain Satan, just like Ham. They go by with Ham. Okay, so that's the Vatican. And then, so the truth, though, went from Yaakov, yeah, who became Israel. God gave him like a spiritual element, and Israel had the 12 tribes of Israel, the sons of Yaakov, and among them also was Joseph. Okay, and what happens is, very complicated story, but the brothers sold Joseph into slavery, and Joseph went down into, under Ham also, I forgot to write Mitzrayim. Ham also has Mitzrayim, who they're cursed, and they have 9 out of 10 levels of sorcery. Wow, this is really messy. I'll try to do a PowerPoint, I guess, in another class if anyone is interested in this. Maybe I'll just stick with the black. Okay, so what happens is that Joseph gets sold, and he goes down to Mitzrayim, which is ancient Egypt. Okay, ancient Egypt. I'm going to get to this part in a minute, but Joseph is sold to ancient Egypt, which is Mitzrayim, which comes from Ham, and they are very, very wicked, and they're cursed. And they have information from Ham and from Lavan, where I am not going to get into it, but that was Lavan was Rachel and Leah, who married Yaakov. Okay, these are the founding fathers of Judaism. Okay, and there's a counter ideology to this, which is basically how to manipulate the powers that God created to run the natural universe. There's a knowledge of how to manipulate it, and the people of the Tower of Nimrod, during the Bible tells us that during Nimrod's time, and this is the Tower of Babel time, we know that Nimrod tried to unite everybody under him to create the Tower of Babel. And what was the Tower of Babel? The Tower of Babel is simply the information, it's the information, of how to manipulate the natural forces of the world to control the world and to be the rulers of the world, to be the masters of the world, which there is only one. It's the master of the universe. That is God. Melech HaOlam, king of the world, master of the universe. And what they want to do, what Nimrod wanted to do, and what the WEF, the UN, and the WHO want to do is they want to create again the Tower of Babel, okay? They want a one world government. Why? Because they're going to control everything, okay? And it's very bad. It's upside down world. This is upside down world where there's a few evil people on the top, evil elites, And then there's the rest of humanity, which they want to enslave. So they want to back to Joseph. They want to enslave us like they did back then in Mitzrayim. And what happens is Joseph goes down to Mitzrayim, and he's put in prison for a bit, and then when he gets out, he becomes the king of the world, because Mitzrayim was nothing right when at that point, but they became they became a great nation because of Joseph. Because Joseph, this lineage is on top and controlling the world, basically through, like, when God is allowed into our world, into our physical world, it's like all the blessings come down through the nation of Israel, who serve God, and their role in this world is to serve God, to make sure that he's in our world. And then what happens is all the blessings come for everybody, just like they did during King Solomon's time. King Solomon, who was the son of King David, and he built the first temple. And when King Solomon was the king over the entire world, and the Jews were doing their job spiritually for this world, being a light unto all of the other nations, when the Jews do that, and when they did that during King Solomon's time, then the world was right side up. Yeah, then everyone had abundance and peace. There was no war. There was a lot of knowledge. It was wonderful. There was prosperity. And right now we're upside down world. Okay, Jews are on the bottom, and that's not because everyone's anti-Semitic. A lot of them are. They are, but it's our fault, because we went and became like them when we assimilated, when we take on their ideology, when we don't learn the Torah, when we don't serve God. We can only be a slave in this world, and either you're a slave to the matrix and you don't even know it, or you suspect it, or you're a slave to the master of the universe, which is our ultimate goal, is to be Eved Hashem, a slave to the master of the universe. That's what Moshe was, and we know that Moshe was a Eved Naaman, a faithful servant, and he became spiritually enlightened. Yeah, and through him we got the Torah. He was spiritually enlightened, master. He was like he no one will ever reach this level of holiness. But just like there's a certain level of holiness, let's say, that could be attained, there's 50 gates of holiness. There's also 50 gates of impurity or evil. Okay, and they have him. These guys, they have the information how to get there. We also have the information how to go the other way, how to go there. So Moshe got to the 49th gate, and what's happening is we're waiting again for another redeemer of Israel, because Israel is in exile. After King Solomon, after the destruction of the second temple, the Jews went to exile. And they spread throughout the nations. But there will be a time, it's called Kibbutz Galiot, the time when we will be brought back out of those nations and back into Am Yisrael. So what happened was the 12 tribes of Egypt, there's 70 souls that went down to Egypt. And at this point, Joseph's already down there, but Joseph becomes a king of Egypt. He becomes a viceroy of Egypt. And then again, we have the abundance comes. The world sees unprecedented abundance, Egypt especially. And Egypt was blessed with all the wealth of the entire world, because what happened was there was a famine. And a famine, and everyone had to sell everything they owned to Pharaoh, to the king of Egypt, to Egypt, in order to get food. Okay, so there was a bunch of all the wealth of the world was flowing into Egypt at that time, and making Egypt very great. That reminds me of what's happening in the Ukraine right now. All the world is pouring money and resources into Ukraine. And now they're also talking about a food shortage. And it seems like they're making that happen. So it seems like it's directed famine. Okay, so right before Egypt, right before the great famine of the entire world, or during that time, Egypt becomes very, very rich. And that's what I see happening in Ukraine before they cause a famine now. But what happened was, because Israel and Yaakov went down to Ham, he had to go down to Egypt. Didn't know that Joseph was down there being the king of the viceroy. But he went down there, and then they were reunited, and he went down with 70 souls. He made sure that he had 70 souls. And what is a soul? A soul is a united male and female. We'll get to that right now. That are together in marriage. You have to get married. You have to get married to be considered a soul. And we know that because it even says that, like, he married off like a baby to somebody, because so you have the fact that it's a complete soul. And then one of the tribes of Israel, now we're following this line again where the blessing went from Adam to Seth to Noah to Shem to Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father, to not to Ishmael, went to Isaac. From Isaac it went to Yaakov, not Edom, not Esav. It did not go there. It went to Yaakov. And Yaakov gave it to his 12 tribes, his sons. All of them were saints. And to Joseph especially, Joseph went down to Mitzrayim, the land of Ham, who were Satan worshippers. And they possessed 9 out of the 10 levels of sorcery. And Levi was passed now. The information now, they all go down to Egypt, and then they become slaves. But guess who didn't become slave? Levi did not become a slave in Egypt. Their tribe was never a slave in Egypt. What is a slavery? It's not just that we were like breaking rocks and building things. No, it was mental slavery. It was an ideological slavery. And what happened was the rest of the tribes mixed in with the Egyptians, and they stopped doing circumcision, which was the covenant that God made with Abraham right from the beginning. Because what happened was Abraham was born into a time when everyone was idol worshippers. And this is Nimrod, the Tower of Babel time also. And Avraham Avinu was born into that reality, but he went into nature, and he looked into nature, and he said, this doesn't make sense. There has to be a creator. It doesn't make sense that there was random mutations, and after billions of years we became a sophisticated and humans, and then, by the way, no other, I guess, evolution stopped, or no other animal line became like the man did. Like, it's crazy stupid to think that. Sorry, but like, and then there's so much biodiversity, and everything acts perfectly, and everything is just perfectly planned. Like, it doesn't make sense that there isn't a creator. And so Avraham Avinu, our father, he started looking for the creator, and he would not give up. And eventually God revealed himself to Abraham, and he revealed himself with a certain name, El Shaddai. Well, I'm not going to go into all of this, but I can. If anyone's interested, I can go more. But right now, for the sake of seeing what is going on in the world, we're going to just say that, so all of this, the circumcision, all that stuff, Levi kept it. And Levi also kept Hebrew names, and they kept themselves separate in the land of Goshen, and they were not enslaved. But the rest of the Jews were enslaved. And then they needed to be redeemed, because if they had gone down so far spiritually, they were in the 49th gate. And if they had hit 50th gate, then that's it. And it would have been almost impossible to bring them out through these means. I mean, God can do anything, but there's going to be another redemption. And so we have to figure out, where are we in this story? Because this is what's happening. So we have to take a look around with the knowledge of the Torah. We have to choose to learn Torah so we can understand. And we'll see that we are also, again, the Tower of Babel. They were destroyed. We're heading towards Tower of Babel with the one world government, okay? But we're also looking at lbgqt in situation and how fast that's on the rise. That's the generation of the flood, who were destroyed before Noah. The world was destroyed because of these people with their no morals and with their no genders and no inhibitions, and everything goes, and it's just like a complete chaos and confusion when we know that God created man and woman and female and male, and that's it, and that is it. And there are some things that happen with the souls and the reincarnations and stuff like that, but there are only two genders. And so a generation where there's this kind of situation, that's the generation of the flood, and they were destroyed. And that's also Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah, they were destroyed. So you think it's going to work out good for us? It's not. But God said he's not going to kill the world again. So we are waiting now for the Mashiach. So that's logically kind of where we are. We're waiting. We're close to where the Mashiach is. And we have the writings of the prophets that tell us, and when you see these things happen, know that the Mashiach is close. The footsteps of the Mashiach are close. Where else are we? So also in Mitzrayim, they had 7 out of 10 levels of sorcery. When you start seeing a rise of science, that means Israel's not learning Torah enough, and that means that for the battle of the good and the evil, we're going down more. We're not going up. Israel's not being a light unto the world. We have to do a better job. We have to realize who we are. We have to wake up and do our job. And so when you see AI and transhumanism, that's the generation of Enoch. And they were destroyed. That's probably Atlantis. That's what happened to them. They were destroyed because of that. And they were worshiping, science, basically, probably. Something like that. BLM, that's Ham. Okay, because, okay, climate change, that's Canaan. Now, the Canaanese, we talked about, okay, do we talk about Podestas and the Clintons? Clinton, yeah, Moloch. They were also worshiping basically the climate. Nothing. God created the world. We're not going to destroy it. They're trying to actively destroy it with chemtrails and all this stuff that they do. But so that's a Canaanese. They're evil. Okay, veganism, that's Cain, who by the way wasn't a great guy. Cain. And then that's also ancient Egypt. They were vegans. They worshipped animals. They didn't like the Jews. They didn't like the 12 tribes because they were shepherds and they ate meat, kosher meat. That's Joseph had to show them. They slaughtered it kosher. They didn't like that. That's where we are. So when we see all these things in our world, what didn't I get to? Yes, Zionism and the state of Israel. Why? Because the proper order of the universe, of the world, to make it peaceful, harmonious, abundant, and what it's going to be like after the Mashiach comes, when Mashiach is king of the world, Melech HaMashiach, he will be king on all of the world and we'll be united. There will be a singularity where we'll go back to the Aleph. Hashem will be Echad, Ushmo Echad. He will be one, and his name will be one, and everybody will know his name. Right now, only the Jews know his name. We said that he revealed himself to Abraham here with a certain name. They knew him as a certain name, but what happened was with Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a spiritually enlightened person, they were prophets. We have Aharon HaKohen, the Kohen Aaron, who was the high priest, and Miriam, the prophetess. They were brothers and sisters, and Moshe, they were all high prophets, but Moshe the highest. And when God gave us, the nation of Israel, the Torah, which basically it helps us get out of the wondering what's good and what's bad, and because we have to know that in the tree of good and evil, in the world of the lies, everything is mixed. The truth and the lies are mixed, and it's hard to tell. And if there's a continuum between evil and good and holy and impure evil, let's just say evil, people normally can tell what is evil. And so most of the people are good, and they want to love God, or they want something. I'm not going to go into the whole thing right now, but I mean, I studied yoga also for a really long time, so I kind of feel like I have an idea of what, the continuum here, but that's not my point right now. My point is that what was my point, actually? So there's a continuum between good and evil, and totally lost my train of thought, but okay, I guess the name, yeah. So he gave his name to the Jews in the Torah. So at the end of time, when there's the redemption, the final redemption, and in our world, everybody will know God, and there's only one God, and what his name is, okay, and what that means. And so what's going to happen is we're waiting. So if you learn Torah and you understand Torah and you become a firm Jew, first of all, you're not going to be a slave to these guys. You're not going to be a slave to these guys. You're going to be like Levi. And hopefully everyone will be, because if everyone repents and does tshuva, then Hashem will just, in mercy, with mercy, he'll just bring the Melech Mashiach, and all this situation will go away. It will be perfect again, and God will do that if we all do tshuva, if all the Jews just do tshuva, repent, start keeping Shabbat, start learning Torah, start living as a Jew, separate yourself. But if not, then what's going to happen is it's going to be just like the redemption of Egypt, what we say in Pesach every year. Then God is going to come and save us eventually. But do you know that only 1/5 of the Jews of Egypt left Egypt, because a lot of them didn't want to go. They didn't recognize these signs. They didn't recognize, not these signs, but they didn't recognize the God. They didn't recognize God. They didn't believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. But I think that we can all look around and say, okay, what's going on? How can we determine if it's good or bad? What's going on? Is it good to be a vegan? What does it mean to good or bad? Is it good to be a vegan? That's the ideology of ancient Egypt. They were wicked. That's the ideology of Cain. He was wicked. So probably not. And we also know that they specifically were not vegans. They specifically were actually, the Egyptians did not like them because they weren't vegans. So it's probably good to to not be a vegan. I would say yes. But that's what's crazy, is that now in our world today, you can't trust the kashrut. That's what's so crazy, is that you can't trust the kashrut. 0 people I know trust the kashrut of the state of Israel. Now let's get into the state of Israel and Zionism. That's Erev Rav. Okay? They're bad. Erev Rav is not good. Erev Rav is what's caused the children of the children of Israel to sin in the desert with the golden calf. That's the Erev Rav. That's what the Torah tells us. So Erev Rav is bad. They're the mixed multitude. And a lot of them also were the sorcerers that came out of Egypt with Israel. They were taken out of Israel also by Moses. But they believed in the power. They saw Moses do all the 10 plagues, and they realized that there's a strong power on the other side. But it seems like they went after Moses, because when Moses didn't come down from getting the Torah on Har Sinai like 5 hours earlier, when they expected him, they right away did some black magic and conjured up the golden calf, and they told Israel, this is your God, because that's a crazy story. But the point of the matter is that if we look in our world right now, we can also spot the Erev Rav, and there's like 5 types of Erev Rav, 6 or 5, I think. And there's great classes on that online too about, and that's Zionism. The state of Israel, the proper order of the world is when the nation of Israel is in the land of Israel. That's their inheritance. That's where God is always overseeing. All the 70 nations have 70 angels looking after them. Each one has its own angel. But Am Yisrael is the Nachala, it's the Am Yisrael, the children of Israel, the nation of Israel is just under God's eyes directly. And then land of Israel, same thing. God has eyes directly on the land of Israel. So the proper order of things is when the nation of Israel is in the land of Israel, keeping the Torah, worshiping God, and bringing all the abundance down into the world, which is spread out to everyone, and everyone recognizes God. That's the proper thing. But what happened is, because the Zionists created a state of Israel, then now whoever's in Israel, it's not only the Jews, not all the Jews. They allow converts that don't like actually become Jews. They just in name alone, like, oh yeah, you're a Reformed Jew, doesn't even matter what your lineage is or whatever. And then they say they're Jews, but they're not Jews. So that's a bloodline. A Jew is a bloodline. And not all the Jews are practicing Judaism. They're not worshiping God. Okay, so if you're worshiping, like if you're doing yoga, if you're, atheist, I don't know, if you have some sort of other ideology, like if you have the ideologies of Yafet, which is Greece, yeah, that's your ideology. If you're very invested in the material world, in your physique, your looks, that's all Greece. Sports, all that stuff is it's not our ideology. It's Yavan. So if that's your ideology, you may be among the 4/5 that didn't come out of Egypt. You got to get your mind right into the Torah. You are a Jew. You are not part of the 70 nations, and you're actually commanded not to marry them. They're commanded to stay and be a Jew. And it's kidai lecha. It's good for you. It's good for you, because then you'll be like Levi. You won't be a slave. And then ultimately, when the Mashiach comes, which seems like we are seeing the footsteps, hearing the footsteps of the Mashiach in the world today. We just look around. Yeah. Then seems like a good time to repent. But repent sounds crazy and like really hard and stuff, but it's not. All it is just saying, look, I'm gonna choose to be a Jew. I'm gonna listen to all of our lineage, wasn't very long ago where all our grandfathers and their fathers were all observant Jews, all shomer Shabbat b'mitzvot, pray to God, At least shomer Shabbat, it was a big shame. It was a shanda, a scandal, not to do Shabbat. Now, who does Shabbat? Come on. So that's where we are. That's what's going on in the world according to the Torah.